Hello and welcome to Happy Horror Time. My name's Tim Murdoch.
And my name is Matt Emmert. Today's special guest played Jeff in Friday the 13th Part 2, the counselor in training who arrived at Packanack Lodge with his girlfriend Sandra, simply looking to play a little harmonica, explore Camp Blood, and, well, to get laid. What he wasn't expecting was Jason Voorhees to be such a buzzkill and drive a spear through both him and Sandra right after doing the deed in one of the franchise's most memorable double murders. Please welcome to the podcast, Bill Randolph. Hi, Bill. How's it going?
Hey, Bill.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. So, we read that you were born in Detroit, but then ended up going to high school in California. So, where did you spend the majority of your childhood, and were you always interested in acting?
Well, it's interesting because my father, worked for the government. He was a civil servant. And in 1963, Charles de Gaulle, who was the president of France at the time, or premier, I don't know what exactly, they're called in France. And Charles de Gaulle basically said, okay, you've had hundreds of thousands of American troops here since the end of World War II. It's 40 years later. Get the hell out of here. So my father, very interestingly, because I was in fifth grade, from 5th to 10th grade, I actually lived in Europe. I lived in central France and southern Germany while my dad was negotiating these moves of hundreds of thousands of troops. And of course, they didn't bring them back to America, but they pretty much shipped everybody from France to from France to southern Germany. And I was born in Detroit, lived in Europe for 5 years, and then went to high school from sophomore through senior in Stockton, California, which is just a lovely place to live. And then my first 2 years of college, I went to PCPA, which was in Santa Maria, California. And from there, I transferred to SUNY Purchase, which is in Purchase, New York, and finished college there and then moved into the city from there. And, the rest is history, as they say.
So how did you discover, or were you always interested in acting, even as you were moving all around the world?
Did you do high school plays like Oklahoma?
Well, not Oklahoma specifically, but yes, a lot of musical plays, because it so happened that the high school director at, my high school, Lincoln High School in Stockton, California, they didn't just do a senior play every year. They did play after play after play after play. And the first play that I saw them do was The Fantastics. And it was like, wow, this is cool. Because it was, my peers, it was, so I thought, well, they can do it. Hell, I can. And in my history class, Mrs. Froelich, I think her name was, one day said, hey, this afternoon they're having auditions for George M. Who knows? Go audition. It might change your life.
Wow, your history teacher said that?
Yes, my high school, world history or God knows what teacher. She said that in class, and sure enough, it did. It changed my life.
And growing up, were horror films on your radar? Was there one that had an impact on you?
Whatsoever.
Really? So nothing growing up, there wasn't a horror movie, or did you just steer clear of them?
No, it was just that, because we lived in Europe from 5th grade to 10th grade, we weren't, number one, we didn't see American television. And number two, I think I did see West Side Story in a movie house in Paris, France. But other than that, we weren't really getting a lot of the American culture. Influence.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess, yeah, of course. So you
there
didn't
Jaws and The Exorcist and Psycho wasn't all just all over.
It
Well,
wasn't
that
news,
had,
right?
certainly, I don't know, when Jaws was later. Yeah, a lot of that stuff hadn't happened yet. It was more like Anthony Perkins
Psycho.
in Psycho and that kind of stuff. Those were around. And I do remember, there were black and white films that I did see on the American bases, but the films, I think, at the most changed once a week. So it wasn't like there was a barrage of stuff that we could go see. Vincent Price, yes, we would go see Vincent Price like I don't know what, but he was like kind of the most horror person that we were exposed to.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I was just going to say, because, we were talking about theater, and before your first movie, we read that you did theater and were even in a play on Broadway. So what was that experience like, and how does being on stage compare to being on film for you?
well, certainly, yeah, stage is completely different in that, you actually have to be heard in the, in the back row. But I was very lucky in the sense, because I was doing this play called Gemini on Broadway, that Fran Cumin and Meg Simon, who cast Friday the 13th Part 2, they had seen me on stage. So I already had that introduction. And I can't remember. I actually met Nancy Allen and Brian De Palma in a film that I did, which was filmed at Sarah Lawrence College, which is Brian De Palma's alma mater. There was a protege of Brian De Palma, and they were doing a film called The First Time, which they were doing up there. And so I met the two of them, and got cast in this, small film just outside of New York City. And Louis DeGiamo, who was the casting director for Dress to Kill, he just called me up. He just said, "Listen, we're doing this, this thing, Dress to Kill. Do you want to do it?" It's like, what are you, crazy? Of course I want to do it. Are you out of your mind? Yes, yes, yes. When, where, and how?
That was our next question, actually, because, even though obviously you're most remembered in horror for your role in Friday the 13th Part 2, your feature film debut was in that Brian De Palma film Dress to Kill. You play the cabbie who drives Nancy Allen during this big chase scene. So we were going to ask how you got involved, but it sounds like you just knew the right people.
Well, I was very lucky that Brian De Palma and Nancy, both Brian and Nancy, were up at, when they were casting this other film. And so I kind of got to know them through that.
What was he like to work with?
I was very lucky, because he was married to Nancy Allen at the time. And she's, I worked with her exclusively on the film. And, it's kind of easy when you're working with the wife, that Brian treated me very well. So, in terms of an introduction to kind of a gigantic film, that was, could not have been better. And of course, my whole thing is at the end of the scene with Nancy Allen, I say, well, she says, give me a call. So, I'm saying to Brian, so, okay, she says, give me a call. Where's my next scene?
Well, what's so funny, Bill, is that we wrote this down because we always watch the people's movies and, think of funny questions. And my question was, you take her on this ride. You say you're going to take her out to dinner. She says, call me, but she leaves before you guys exchange numbers. So how are you supposed to get in touch with her?
Oh, details.
Yeah, but that's true. It's like, where's your next scene? Another funny thing about your scene, it's great because, she's being followed by, well, she thinks is the killer, but it's like this woman is dressed up and you open the car door right in front of her and it knocks her down. How was that scene filmed? I'm assuming you didn't really knock anyone down with the car door. Was that a stunt person?
No, in fact, the way essentially, and I don't think that Brian was happy with my reading, because the way that I said "excuse me," which was kind of because I saw it as being a comic moment. So I come out with this excuse. It's like Steve Martin. Excuse me. And I couldn't get that out of my head, and he gave me take after take after take after take, and in retrospect, I know he was just waiting, begging me to say it somehow differently than Steve Martin. But
that was prime time Steve Martin time. Like that was at his peak, like comedy special.
And it also is kind of a comic moment because you like knock her over, like the door knocks her down.
Yes, but in back to your question in terms of that, no, I just would open the door, and I think it had like a sandbag so that the door wouldn't swing all the way. But no, there was nobody there that I was physically knocking over. That was actually a separate shot. And actually, that's an interesting question, because when you think of it, if I have to look at that film again to see when it turns out to be Michael Caine in drag.
Yeah.
But when I knock this person over, am I in the background? Or physically, how was that shot? Was because
we just watched it, and what I remember, they have a good shot of you looking at like the rear view mirror. You open the door, and then it kind of looks like the shot is above her because she's just like face down on the ground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't remember if you are. I think
so maybe you don't get my reaction shot of actually.
Maybe they do. I can't remember, but I just thought it was a pretty funny moment. Like
I love Dressed to Kill, but I love Friday 13th Part 2 much more.
Yeah, but it's just so funny because it's just such a great movie to have your debut in, It's just such a cult classic, Dressed to Kill.
Was there a red carpet premiere for Dressed to Kill that you got to attend, or a cast and crew screening?
You would think so.
But
to be honest, I do not remember, any kind of a premiere thing. And it's very possible that it premiered in Los Angeles.
So moving on to Friday 13th Part 2, what was the audition process like for Jeff? And did you audition for any other roles, or was it strictly for Jeff?
It was strictly for Jeff. I probably had to do a preliminary audition with Megan Fran, but then I fairly quickly was at an audition with Steve Miner. Steve Miner was there, who directed Friday the 13th Part 2. And I was paired up with a Sandra, who was not Marta Kober, who eventually got Sandra. And I think the reason why I got the role was this beautiful young actress was off the wall. She was just bouncing from wall to wall to wall to wall. I mean, she had so much energy, and she was just so pert and cute. And I don't remember anything else other than she had this just kind of huge energy that was all over the place.
This is the girl you were first paired up with.
This is the girl I was first paired up with, who did not get the part.
Oh, Meg Ryan. No,
yeah, right. Yeah, Meg Ryan. In my
Nicole
dreams.
Kidman.
Yeah, really. Let me tell you, being naked in a bed for hours with Meg Ryan. Not that Marta was no, chopped liver, but certainly this girl was absolutely, so I turned to Steve and I said, "Are you kidding?"
While she was in the room still?
While she was in the room, bouncing off the wall.
What did Steve say?
Steve laughed. The two of us laughed. And then we went on with, because he was basically trying to get an improv out of us. And which, I don't know how successful the improv ever was.
Apparently not for her, I guess, because she didn't get the role.
But the fact that Steve and I connected on this very
eccentric,
excited young lady, that's when I got the role. I got the role right then when Steve and I connected.
Yeah, that's funny. A good bonding moment.
Yeah, well, because I guess you understood that it was like, it sounds like she was playing like a caricature of the part,
Who knows? I can't even claim to think that I know what was going on in her head.
Sometimes actors make these crazy choices.
It's like sometimes less is more, but I think sometimes people at auditions think I need to show them like everything.
I'm going to show them 10
times the role, even though it's just, counselor.
Yeah, or, and it's also just possible that she was very nervous.
That's true. So, Lauren Marie Taylor, who we just recently had on the show, told us that all the stars watched the original Friday the 13th movie together after being cast. Were you a part of this watch party? And what did you think of the first film?
Well, certainly the thing is that, Kevin Bacon, and essentially I play his clone in part 2. All of these, young actors and actresses in New York City, we actually used to go bowling. And I was doing Gemini at the time, and Kevin Bacon was dating somebody in Gemini. So I knew Kevin through, not only because he actually, in fact, and I can't remember his name, but the young guy that played the lead in Dress to Kill, what was his name? Do you remember?
Keith Gordon?
Yeah, Keith Gordon. Keith Gordon and Kevin Bacon were doing an off-Broadway play downtown, which, all us young actors, we always went and saw anything that anybody was in. But there was a great bowling alley on Amsterdam Avenue between 77th and 78th Street or somewhere in that neighborhood. And it was like a slice out of the Midwest. 10 lanes, could not have been more Midwest if you tried. And we would go there and go bowling. So I knew Kevin, and I knew a lot of people. Kira Sedgwick, Jennifer Grey. Trying to think of all these people that would go bowling. So yeah, I did know Kevin before I got the role.
Wait, when you got the role, did Kevin have anything to say about being in a Friday the 13th film, or?
Not really.
Really? Like,
he didn't give you any advice?
Just no comment? He had no comment?
The thing is it's funny because when I told him I was playing his clone in part 2, his reaction was very nonplussed also. It was kind of like, okay, I hope everybody forgets that.
It's so interesting that later people embrace it, but at the time they're like, oh.
Guess what, Kevin? No one forgot it.
Yeah, and not only that, but I saw a commercial that he did recently where he's playing 3 different people advertising a streaming channel where he's doing his Footloose character. He's doing his what's the military one?
A Few Good Men.
Yeah, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah,
and so he's in uniform, and he's in his got the earphones for Footloose, and kind of bouncing around, and he's also sitting at the table. He did not have an arrow through his neck, but he did have an arrow sticking out through his chest. And so he acknowledges the fact, and probably because all 3 movies were available on this streaming network, so he acknowledges that, yes, it did exist, and yes, I was part of it, and blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, yeah, he's pretty much, kind of, until now. I think that he embraces it more now that he realizes, okay, it's not going to go away.
Yeah, and his daughter is now entering the horror world with
Smile. What's funny is that if he would go to a convention, the lines would be out the door, and I feel like he Maybe at one time will. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis did a horror convention, only one, but she did one. John Carpenter's come. So like, it's just so funny.
Anything's possible.
Yeah. So maybe he will. I just think it's funny you guys were friends and then you get the part and you're playing basically like kind of a clone of him. I didn't know if he gave you any advice, but wanted to ask you about, so you get the role of Jeff. Was there anything specific you wanted to bring to that role, or did you just see it more as the type of thing where you could kind of have fun, be yourself in that role?
Well, when I showed up on set, I had, black high top shoes. I had all this stuff that I brought and the hat that I wore in the film actually is the same hat that I wore in Dress to Kill.
Yes, yes.
So I brought the hat. I brought some shoes. I brought these ridiculous tube socks that had, these red stripes and all this stuff. I brought all this stuff that I thought, and I also brought, kind of cigarette Tipperillo. I brought, some odd, thing to smoke. And he immediately nixed everything but the hat.
Cut everything, keep the hat.
Said,
I love that.
No.
Who knows? Like what if the cabbie from Dress to Kill just happened to get a job at a summer camp?
Yeah. Anything's possible.
I would have loved it if Nancy Ellen had showed up at some point.
Right. And we heard that during filming, the cast and crew stayed in cabins. Who did you stay with in the cabins?
Yeah, you had to room with cast members, right? Or other cast members?
Yeah, I think we all had our own cabins.
Oh, that's convenient.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Because there were a lot of like counselor cabins and stuff like that. So I don't think that we actually had to room with everybody. But literally the cabins were, 10 feet apart. And they were nice. They were nice cabins. And that was the Boy Scout camp that was around the lake from the set camp, which was different.
Okay.
The set camp was actually a much smaller operation. And of course you see it all over the screen. But, the Boy Scout camp was probably twice as big, and it also had, a tennis courts and that kind of stuff. And so it was kind of like, the Boy Scout camp where we stayed was an upgrade to what the set camp was.
I actually didn't know that until now. Every time we've heard, that everyone stayed in the cabins, I thought it was the cabins you shot in. I didn't know it was a separate. So you guys stayed in a separate camp that was near the camp that was shot in. Did you know? Yeah. Am I the only one that didn't know that?
I just assumed that it was the filming one.
Yeah, I thought it was the film. Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
No, actually, it was like, I don't know, like maybe a mile. I mean, you could walk it if you wanted to, but for the most part, they would pick us up and take us to the set. But it literally was like, it was like a mile around the lake.
That's so fun.
And Laura Marie Taylor has mentioned, she's told the story that, one night she was in her cabin alone, and I guess a bunch of her male co-stars tried to scare her and she ended up fainting. So I got to ask, were you one of the culprits? And if so, what did you all do that made her faint?
Stu Charno and I were, the assholes, at the camp. And in fact, we did this not only to Lauren Marie, but also Kirsten. We actually, and all we did, because everybody had screens on their windows, is we went to the back window screen and scratched the screens.
So evil, but funny.
No, I think that's hilarious, actually. But wait, do you remember her fainting? Did you think oh shit, I think we went too far?
You killed her.
You killed her. No, do you remember her fainting, or did you guys just scratch and leave?
We scratched and left.
Scratch the old scratch and leave.
The thing was that if she did faint, that meant that she wasn't screaming. So it was like, oh, okay, she probably didn't even hear it. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So after the night shoots, did you guys go out and party and do stuff like that, or
no not at
you're
all.
Tired?
Yeah, well, because the thing is that essentially The big meal of the day was breakfast. So everybody would show up, at the cafeteria, which was a big kind of mess hall at the Boy Scout camp, and have breakfast. And one of the things that we would do is that people started to bring, well, okay, this is a Southern mash that you can't get anywhere except for my hometown. So everybody was bringing whatever they could in terms of libations, so that, breakfast was not, it was breakfast, but it was like dinner, and everybody was, anybody who wanted to could get, as stupid as they wanted to.
So basically,
then we
you
would
didn't go
sleep
out
all
and
day.
party, but you drank with breakfast.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was our party spot. It was like, because the camp itself was not close to any town. Blairstown, certainly. No, not Blairstown. It wasn't Blairstown at all, but it was, New York, Connecticut. There really was no close town. Probably the closest thing was where we filmed, running up the street and going around to, running around to Ted's place. But, I didn't have a car. I didn't own a car.
Because they took your truck.
They towed your truck. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. My truck was long gone. And besides, and there's a great story about the truck too, in the sense that, when we come around the corner and we drive up there, they had the set and all the crew and everybody was around the corner. As you look down the mountain, we were to the right, and we make a left turn onto the main road. But around on the other side, the truck that they originally wanted to use, they brought on a flatbed, and it was, it was twice the size of the truck that we used. But it was on a flatbed, and they couldn't get it started. They could not get it off the flatbed. And the truck that we used was somebody who was a local just driving by and was saying, "Oh, look at that big truck. I think my truck is big. That truck's really big." And they, ran after, I don't know whether they ran after him, but they, quickly threw a body in front of the truck so he would stop, and negotiated with him right there. Can we use your truck?
Well, you guys would have lost a day of filming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they offered him some money, so or a meal.
He probably made more money than any of us. We were just
They're like, "Hey, can we use your truck?"
We were just making scale.
Well, what's funny is that we were gonna your first scene, the iconic Crazy Ralph character comes up to you and Marta Kober, who plays your girlfriend Sandra, and gives you the classic "You're all doomed" line. Unfortunately, Walt Gorney, who played Crazy Ralph, passed away in 2004. But do you have any memories of working with him or filming that scene?
He was the ultimate professional. It's just, the rest of us, were, we were all kind of loose and happy and whatever. But he would show up in character with his lines, ready to go. Show me my marks. He'd hit the marks, and it would be done and over. So even though now that I see in like photographs that people have taken and whatever, that he was, kind of around the set more than I remember, because I only remember dealing with him during our shots. Mm-hmm. And even though there's physical evidence that that's not true. But he was an inspiration. He really was cool. He just was Ralph. He was there. It was really, really fun.
Such a memorable character, and it was so great, so genius that they brought him into the sequel. Nobody listened the last time. I'm going to tell some other kids who won't listen.
Absolutely. And I think that probably during the, the first film, that he got such, great numbers, and that people liked him and remembered him so much that it was a no-brainer to bring him back.
Yeah. I mean, he's always around.
Voice of reason.
Yeah. You know, and
Absolutely.
then, of course, there's your incredibly memorable death scene when you and poor Sandra are made into a human shish kebab by Jason
That's right.
after having sex. So before we talk about, because we're going to ask you about some of the logistics and the effects.
Instead of saying shish kebab, what I say is fuck shabab.
Oh my God, I love that. Okay, a fuck shabab. That is hilarious and very on brand for me.
And,
Tim is going to blush.
I mean, I remember when I tried to get the video as a kid, but like your picture is on the back of the box with like the spear going through. So
I know.
I was like, my parents are never gonna like. I literally had to do so much like finagling to get
The fuck
the box
shabab.
onto the counter without my parents flipping it over.
And then they cut all of that.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to ask you. First thing, before we get into logistics, something I'm hoping you can clear up for us. There are all these rumors online, you know, people are always posting stuff about how a much more explicit sex scene was filmed between you and Marta, and she did full frontal nudity, but then it was all cut by the studio. Is that true? And then also, to be equal, did they at least require you to be naked during that scene too?
I do not, you know, certainly it's very possible that film exists. I'm not sure that anybody has that in terms of Marta's naked breasts, because at the time we were filming, she was 16 years old.
Wow.
That's problematic.
That's probably
you know,
not.
nowadays it would never happen.
Of course, yeah.
But you know, and I was 26. You know, so I you know, who
decade.
knows? You know, in retrospect, I could be you know, arrested for statutory rape.
Oh, God.
But so I'm not sure. Just in terms of that, for the most part, you know, yeah, the crew was very respectful, and there was only a skeleton crew in the room when we were filming. But talk about skin on skin. You know, I was a very happy cowboy.
So you're both like fully naked on top of each other during the scene? No, but like, what do they call privacy cloths or anything?
No.
Oh my gosh, I would be like, thank you so much. I have to go.
You know, at the time it was, you know, I don't know. Yeah, you know, just in terms of doing the scenes and actually doing the whole movie, it was all done, you know, because everything was done with either one or two takes. There was not a lot of, there was no wasted time. Mm-hmm. So essentially, it was the kind of thing of where we would do a rehearsal, and mainly the rehearsals were for the camera, because it was for the camera moves, and there were a lot of dollies and things like that. And it was a dolly shot from the bottom of the bed up towards the top of the bed. And so I'm sure that we probably they just said, okay, let's get started. And, you know, the two of us disrobed, got under the covers, and didn't think anything about it after that.
And how did the spear effects come into play? Like, because obviously, like, you guys are there, and then there's this, Jason comes in, and so
and
like
puts a spear through your back,
right.
which wasn't your back. But how did they film that whole effect?
Like how many days did this take?
That was separate. The actual spear, and Carl Fullerton was the was the special effects on that. And they essentially made a mold of my back, from kind of mid buttocks up to my shoulders. And that took the longest time in terms of attaching that latex to my shoulders so you could not see any seams. So, when I moved this way or moved that way or whatever, all of a sudden it didn't wrinkle in a funny way. And we did 2 takes. Each take took 4 hours. And there was, certainly a receptacle and, like a plaster Paris kind of thing where the spear could go into, and the tubes with the blood could come out. So, and essentially once it was in place and they could see that it was seamless, and I moved my head maybe once or twice or something so that they could see that I was still a human being there, that, Carl Fullerton was standing off frame and just plunged it into my back where it was supposed to go, and then the blood would, there were other guys on the floor pumping blood. And once they got it, once that was done, then it was like, okay, we got to clean up. We're going to do it one more time.
Wow.
So it was 4 hours to get to that point of the, maybe at most 10 seconds of frame time. And then they would clean it all up, get it all set up again, and another 10 seconds where they plunged it in again.
All while you and Marta had to just be sitting there.
Marta was not there. Marta came in at the very last because the bed had a hole in it. So Marta came just before they started to shoot, and this is after I'm there for 4 hours. She literally kind of slid underneath me so that it looked like she was lying in bed, but essentially, she was just basically, just her head and shoulders, so that it looked like she was underneath me. And the way that the effect was on me, it looked like somebody was under me, but she wasn't. She came in and actually was, sitting normally, like you normally sit, and just kind of got into place and went like this.
What you can't see is that he's laying down
just with his head leaning back. So a funny thing is, in the Crystal Lake Memories documentary, you mentioned that while you were waiting to film your death scene, the sound guy came up and blew some sort of powder into your mouth, which I guess made you high. Can you tell us about what was this powder, and were you okay to keep filming?
Well, the thing is that it wasn't. It had to have been some kind of a relaxer kind of thing. And to this day, I don't know what it was, but all I know is that it was like, oh God, are we, are we going to finish this? Are we going to finish this? What's going on? What's taking time now? And then, he kind of came over, and, my head was this way on the bed, so he just came over to basically, just to me right there. And he said, open your mouth. And I just went like this. And and it was like 10 minutes later. Wow. Okay.
I want to know what this powder is.
I didn't have to do any acting. The only thing I had to do was get a spear through the back. So, it was like, it didn't matter that I was, like, wow. And I don't think you ever saw my eyes in that shot.
Never, no.
It's like, I could have, been completely dilated and nobody would have ever known. But it certainly made the 8 hours a lot nicer and easier.
That is hilarious. I love that he
film in the actual upstairs cabin, like in that tiny room with all the crew in there.
Yes.
Wow, that's a tight spot.
Yeah, and certainly the thing is that we did not have to be there when they were basically setting up the lighting, which was most of the time, and the setup. We would come in very close to filming, and although for my particular for the back thing, of course, I had to be in the bed, which was a special bed with a hole in it, so that it looked like I was lying there, but I wasn't. And but yeah, there was the camera, there was the dolly, there was the focus puller, there was and they tried to minimize it as much as possible so that there weren't nobody extra was in the room. Mm-hmm. If you either had a job and you had to perform it while we were filming, or
get out.
Yeah, you were out in the hallway.
So wait, so then the parts that were cut, other than if there's this nudity that everybody says on the internet exists that we don't even know exists, the blood actually gushed up through the top of your latex back, I guess
on the back of the VHS box.
So that, because again, in the actual theatrical cut, you just see the spear go through the bed and you see some blood guts below.
You don't see it touch flesh at all.
But as you were filming, I take it you were saying they were blowing blood out of the top of your back?
There is I think it's a Blu-ray box set, which came out recently, that has all of the films. Mm-hmm. In the extras of that, it has that original footage.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So when you actually saw your scene for the first time, edited and everything in like the final product, what did you think?
Yeah, were you like, what happened to all the footage?
Well, yeah, you know,
were you sitting in the theater?
No, actually, I saw it at a screening, and Meg and Fran were there, and my agent was there. I don't know if any other cast members were there, but you know, it was just a little screening room in mid Manhattan, and I turned to my agent. And I said, "That's it," you know, because it was like, "What are you kidding?" And after the film finished, I said to my agent, I said, well, it's not going to do me any harm.
So, you know, there's something we were talking about details in Dress to Kill. There's something I've always wondered regarding the aftermath of your death scene. So Lauren Marie Taylor, you know, comes in the room. She backs into your body, which is now propped up against the wall with a noose around your neck made of a sheet. Now, why did Jason need to hang you by a sheet if you had already been skewered to death? Or did Steve Miner ever explain the thinking behind why you had to have a noose around your neck at that point?
Oh, you know, of course not. But visually, it was great.
Oh,
and certainly what it did is it immediately, not only was it very scary for Lauren Marie's character, but also, you know, it was like the use of the sheet like that was fantastic because you could get a lot of blood and cover up my naked body, you know, so that it would remain, you know, PG. But you got the idea, you know. So, you know, it in term, and I'm sure it was in the script. That, you know, it was something that just worked very well.
Well, Jason had needed room to get into that bed to get under the covers.
That's true.
Yeah, Jason was not. Jason was not. It was pretty. It was not a small character.
And did you have to because you know Lauren Marie Taylor's death is like a slow death? Were you there hanging on that sheet the entire time?
No, the thing that's cool is that there is actually a little I don't know, you know, 2x4 you know, shelf that they had there, which essentially, you know, in between takes, I could, you know, just kind of sit there and hang out. And then when they started to film, all I had to do was slip off the shelf and hang. So I was only literally hanging for, you know, the 2 minutes of filming, and then I'd go back, sit on the shelf and wait for the next thing, and then just do that.
That's great. Well, now the most important question regarding your death scene, the most important one. Did you get to keep the latex back that was made of your body?
No, it was pretty much, and that's too bad. And actually, it's fun. I mean, when we finally got this film, the film that's on the box set, Edwin Samuelson was doing a documentary for that box set, and we started talking about it. And I mentioned that I thought Carl Fullerton had the original VHS with the cutout, you know, not only that, but also, you know, just the different deaths and stuff like that. And, you know, that I had heard that he had all that original stuff. And I just happened to I still had in my, you know, Rolodex or my address book, his number from New Jersey when we first did, you know, because we went to New Jersey to do the mold of the back and things like Russell Todd. They also have Russell Todd's, you know,
throat,
you know, hanging upside down, slit throat. And so I said, well, I'll give him a call and see, you know, does he still have the VHS? Mm-hmm. And I don't think he did not respond directly to me. But he did contact Peter Bracke and Edwin Samuelson, who were doing this documentary that was going to be part of the extra footage and whatever. And so But, thanks to me, which nobody seems to give me credit for, is that I got in touch with Carl Fullerton and I said, okay, listen, Edwin Samuelson is getting on we can meet you anywhere if you have this VHS. And he said, yes, he had the VHS. And actually, Carl Fullerton has been doing like Denzel Washington's makeup for like a decade or something like that. Mm-hmm. So he was about to get on a plane at JFK and go to Los Angeles to work on a film with Denzel Washington. And, don't quote me because I may be totally wrong with all of my facts here. But so Edwin Samuelson, we tried to arrange to meet him before he got on the plane at JFK. And we missed him there. But we immediately said, okay, Peter Bracke, this is the plane he's on. This is when he's landing in LAX at this time. Meet him and get this VHS. So Peter Bracke was able to meet him and get the VHS. Then the VHS actually had to be baked to get the images off of it. It was
what does
like
that mean?
VHS was was 40 years old.
Oh yeah, because the tape kind of like disintegrates.
It falls apart. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they actually, and certainly in Los Angeles, they have all sorts of different labs that can, save things. But that's what they had to do. They had to go bake the VHS to save the images. And then they put that, on part of the box set.
But where is your latex back at today?
Well, I think that, essentially when you put a spear through something and you pump a lot of, fake blood, it's not necessarily something you want to hang on the wall as a keepsake.
True. We also wanted to ask you about that quick run through you do on camera while Ginny and Paul are leaving the bar in the rain. How did that come about? Did you just ask Steve Miner and say like, hey, let me do a quick run through? Like, how'd that come about?
It was not asking Steve Miner. It was begging Steve Miner for a week. Hey, let's do a Hitchcock. Nobody's ever going to know. Nobody's ever going to see it. It's just going to be something that we will be able to talk about, 100 years from now. And finally he said yes.
It's so funny because
I love that
you could never ever spot it if you hadn't mentioned it in Crystal Lake Memories. Yeah, so it's genius because
What's so sad is that casino's no longer in existence.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And Lauren Marie Taylor said that she couldn't remember a premiere or a cast and crew screening. Do you remember one?
No, not really. I mean, I know that I saw it with in a screening room with my agent, but beyond that, no, I don't think they.
Did you ever just go see it as a regular person?
Oh, yeah.
As a regular person.
Actually, yes. Actually, I did. I went to, because it was playing not too far from New York, like across the George Washington Bridge in a, theater complex or something. So, yeah. I did
so you
go.
To see with an audience.
Yes.
So what were their reactions like, especially during your death scene?
It was just too cool. That was worth the price of admission. Essentially, because I don't know. I don't think I really disguised myself, but I certainly didn't, want to draw attention to myself either.
That's me.
It was so much fun after, to hear the gasp. With this. And the thing that's interesting, it was the original cut. So the gasp came when the spear hit the floor with the blood, which, logically makes absolutely no sense because if a spear is going through, a mattress and springs and all this other stuff, it's not going to have any more blood on it. And so, yeah, that was really fun.
That's so cool. We want to play a little game real quick with you where we ask you some simple questions and you just have to answer with the name of one of the following Friday the 13th Part 2 co-stars. Either Marta Kober, who played your girlfriend Sandra, Lauren Marie Taylor, who played Vicky, Russell Todd, who played Scott, Amy Steele, who played Ginny, or John Fury, who played Paul. So obviously, you know, we know you had other co-stars in the film, but we just wanted to choose 5. So we picked your on-screen girlfriend and the 4 other we've had on our show. So again, the 5 names to choose from: Marta Kober, Lauren Marie Taylor, Russell Todd, Amy Steele, or John Fury. So among these co-stars, who was the biggest jokester or partier on set?
Marta Kober.
Really?
I can see that. She seemed very calm.
Oh, okay. Wait, calm?
Calm.
Oh, but I said the biggest jokester.
Oh, well, I mean, that's what I mean.
Oh, jokester. I don't know. Well, you know, certainly if you added Stu, if you added Stu was the biggest jokester.
Oh, true, Stu Charno. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to the next question.
She seemed pretty calm.
She seemed pretty calm.
Well, the next one.
Who was the most reserved?
John Fury.
Really? Well, I mean, he was the head guy in charge.
Hey, do you
and
people...
certainly the thing that's great about the conventions is that, you know, Russell Todd, which I did not actually spend a lot of time with either on screen or off screen. Since the conventions, I've become I've had a great time at conventions with Russell Todd, and the same with John Fury, because he was like the boss. You know, I really didn't socialize with John Fury at all.
Do people ask you constantly whatever happened to Paul? Like you have some
because everyone
thank God nobody thank God only John Fury has to deal with that.
So who was, of those 5, who was most like their Friday the 13th character in real life?
John Fury.
Oh, really? Yeah, that makes sense.
Who did you?
Although he has a much better sense of humor than he had as Mr. Holt.
Head counselor. Who did you become closest to while filming?
The thing that's great is that with both Stu and with Marta, because we're both from New York, we got together before we went up for filming, and Stu actually is a tremendous, jazz pianist. And so we would go listen to him play. And Marta, Stu, and I became very close before we went up.
Just for listeners, in case, Stu Charno played a Ted, just in case, who survives this, actually, because he never goes back to the camp.
Right.
Whatever happened to Ted. Yeah.
Really. Who did you keep? Now, who of those 5 did you keep in touch with the most after filming?
Stu Charno.
Oh, okay. Now we have some. Sorry, go ahead.
The thing that's interesting is that, certainly Stu lives in California, and I did a few jobs out in California. And whenever I would do a job out in California, he and I would get together.
That makes sense.
This is like a trivia question for you. Who made their feature film debut in the 1980 slasher He Knows You're Alone?
It's one of those 5.
Russell Todd.
Yes. Wow. Woo! Good job. He's in the opening scene, which is the ironic part about that, and we talked about this, is that he gets hung upside down in that movie too.
Yes. And that's what I remember. I do remember him talking about that. Yeah.
That's so funny.
What are the odds?
Okay, so here's another trivia one about the 5. Who went on to have a role in 1990's Slumber Party Massacre 3?
Marta?
Yes, she was in it. She played, quote, Pizza Girl.
Who went on to star in 1986's slasher film April Fool's Day?
Amy Steele?
Yes, 3 for 3.
Wow.
Okay, this one I think you'll get maybe. Whose spouse also has a background in horror?
Wild guess, John Fury?
Yes, his wife, Denise Galick, starred in Don't Answer the Phone and Humanoids from the Deep.
Wow.
Yes. Okay. And last one. This is a fun one.
Who got killed by someone wearing a bear costume in their next horror film after Friday 13th Part 2? Like pretty much right after Friday 13th Part 2.
1 year after Friday 13th Part 2, this person was in a horror film where they got killed.
I have no idea, but I'm throwing out Marta again.
It's Lauren Marie Taylor. She was in Girls Night Out and got killed by someone.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, so just
so I didn't get 100%.
You got 4 out of 5. So close. Very great, though. Like, yeah. So just a few more questions before we wrap up. It looks like by looking at IMDb and your resume that you had retired from acting in the early 90s. What led to that decision?
I was very fortunate to have my wife and I had our son, and I took the. I mean, it's more mundane than anything altruistic, other than the fact that we needed health insurance, and I was able to get a full-time job at the New York Daily News, doing graphic design. And so that's what I did. So the 20 years that he's now, so those 20 years that I worked at the Daily News was for health insurance.
Hey, that makes sense. A lot of people, especially when they have kids, you need a stable job with health insurance and a paycheck every couple weeks.
And has your child seen Friday the 13th Part 2?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
And his thoughts.
And it's funny because for the most part, where you're trying to downplay it or whatever, but every once in a while, like to say, like one of the secretaries or assistants at whatever school he was at, he would throw it out there. Listen, my dad's in Friday the 13th Part 2. Do you know that movie? And of course, the receptionist or whatever would go, oh my God, and so yeah, he would use it whenever it benefited him.
Hey, why not? Like, get the extra cool points with people. My dad was in this movie. That's awesome.
Let me tell you, I could not have been, more excited and proud the fact that he was interested in mentioning it,
That's great.
Because otherwise, I'm just dad.
Well, and a question related to just the whole series and the fandom in general. Like, when do you think you first became aware of all the fandom behind the Friday the 13th series? And why, in your opinion, do you think people like it so much, especially your sequel, Part 2?
And I also want to add on to this question. Have you seen all the sequels in the theater since yours?
No, certainly not in the theater. And thank goodness for the box set, because the box set, we got everything plus extras. And that really was the first and easiest opportunity, to watch them. And it becomes a bit of a struggle after a while, just in terms of, some of it really kind of stretches the envelope, and you kind of go, yeah, okay, this is so, but yeah, but no, I did not go see them in the theaters.
But moving back to the question that he just hijacked,
I hijacked this question.
When do you think you became aware of all that fandom, and why do you think that people like these movies so much, especially your sequel? And I'm trying to remember because I can't really recall, but it was the conventions, and I don't really remember the first convention that I went to. I think it was one it might have been a Comic-Con here in New York City, when it was just in a hotel across the street from Madison Square Garden. It was very small and, very few people and had more to do with vendors than it did with celebrities. But, it wasn't until we started doing conventions that I started to think, wow, this is cool. I love the conventions.
A little bit of time went by before, like, there was this resurgence of fandom. Like, was there a time in your life where you're just like, it's so far behind me?
Oh, absolutely. And certainly the thing is that, having decided to, take a real job, and for the most part, kind of because it's difficult to be an actor and have a real job. Pretty much, yeah. That's I realized, okay, it's on hiatus. We'll wait and see what happens. Anybody got anything? I'm back in the game.
Well, that's what we want to know. What are you up to today? Would you ever consider doing another movie, maybe especially a horror movie?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I don't know. I've been a member of the Actors Studio. I don't know if anybody in the real world knows anything about the Actors Studio, but it was and remains a tremendous place for, certainly, when it first started, we're talking about Elia Kazan, Lee Strasberg, Marilyn Monroe, Cliff Robertson. They were pretty much the beginning of it, but it still exists. And essentially, there's a difficult rehearsal process to become a member. But once you're a member, it's a lifetime membership. And I can use that theater and those rehearsal rooms, whenever, for nothing. Ooh. And there are 2 actor sessions each week on Tuesdays and Fridays. And to be able to go and watch people doing just, amazing work for nobody but themselves. It has been wonderful for me. And there's a director there that I worked with 50 years ago that is a member of the director's unit. And he and I, anytime he has a project, he says, come do this. Come do this with me. Come do this with me. Wow. And, certainly it's not for anything, commercial in particular, but, it just gets the juices going again. And there's, I'm open for anything.
I mean, I will tell you this, like, as major fans of the Friday the 13th films, fans of all of these films love to see the actors from this franchise in other horror movies. I mean, the second they say starring this person from Friday the 13th part whatever, you've got a whole fan base and audience for that. So
I follow you to the end of the earth.
Yeah, we would love to see you in more horror sometime.
Yeah. You guys know any producers?
We'll think about it. First up, we have one final question for you, Bill, and thank you for all of your time today. It's going to kind of put you on the spot, so we'll give you a second to think about it. But we asked this to every single guest. What is just one thing that you can tell us about your experience working on Friday the 13th Part 2 that you've never told any other interviewer, publication, convention Q&A, podcaster? Just one thing. It doesn't have to be like the most salacious detail unless you want it to be. It can be something simple, whatever. Just something that you have never told any other podcaster, convention Q&A thing about
Laura Marie Taylor.
Yeah, you haven't even told Laura Marie Taylor about working on Friday the 13th Part 2.
Well, I would never tell Laura Marie Taylor this. The whole skin on skin day that I spent with Marta. Certainly that's more enjoyable than I have ever admitted.
You both had poison ivy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There was a whole lot of rubbing going on.
Wow.
I mean, you're only human.
And, sometimes you have to go a little method, I guess. Okay.
And I tell you, the thing that's amazing is that, unfortunately, I haven't seen as much of Marta at conventions as I would love to, because she and Stu, because I guess they're California based. They don't seem to come to the East Coast conventions that much. But, there's nothing I would like better than to go have dinner with the two of them again.
That'd be great.
I think that could happen.
Maybe when this episode comes out, maybe we can look for them on social media and tag them, and they can hear you say that directly.
Yes.
You can go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Yeah.
No, that is great. And, you know, it's so nice for people like us to hear that, like, we talk to so many people from horror movies who have said that conventions are the way they've been able to keep in touch with so many of their old co-stars, you know? And I think that's great. Because you shared an experience. It was a long time ago, but it's become so iconic. And now a lot of these conventions allow you all to, like, you know, see each. It's like going back to your high school.
No, and the cool thing is like the Friday 13th films. I always say this, so I'm a broken record, but they're so beautifully shot. There's a lot of time in like the, you know, the look of the film, the music of the film, the actors. Like there is something just really cool about this exclusive club that you're in.
And also your sequel, like I can tell you, in my opinion, why I think people like your sequel so much. Your sequel, first off, part 2 is like one of the ones most people answer as their favorite one in the series. I think it has it kept things simple. You know, there's no Jason in space. It has a great fun cast with all the different people you want to see at a camp. It has a great strong final girl, we don't
know what happened to Paul.
We don't know what happened to Paul, and has a really scary villain. Like that's why I think part 2 especially stands out among the sequels, you know, as one of those that most people say is like their favorite.
Well, I think we were very lucky that we were number 2, because I think that, you know, because certainly Steve Miner and a lot of the people that were involved in part 1 did part 2. And I think that the you know, whatever experience and knowledge and help that they got from doing part 1, we completely benefited from.
Yeah.
So, you know, and of course, you know, it's hard for me to say this, but part 2 is my favorite.
How come?
Do you get residuals from the other sequels? Because aren't you like in part 4, like in a brief second?
No.
You are, right? You are in the
I think the back of you is in the campfire scene.
Yeah.
You should be contact Paramount. Talk to John Fury about this. He knows all about how to get
Russell
residuals.
Todd is the one that
yeah. I need to talk to somebody.
It's like a quick second.
That's you. You should be getting that money.
Yeah, really. In fact, I'll give John a cut if he gets it for me.
You could work that out. Well, look, we've had such a blast talking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Seriously, we will be in touch when the episode comes out, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for chatting with us, spending the afternoon with us. We've had a blast.
Okay, yeah, me too.
And we hope to meet you in person sometime. We come to some of these conventions. So, I mean, we're on the West Coast, but if you're ever in California or wherever on the East Coast at a convention, we can come up and say hi.
It used to be that California wasn't that far away. It seems like since COVID, California's become much further away.
I hear you.
There's some great nonstop quick flights, though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then you can have that dinner with Stu Charno and Marta.
Throw in Russell Todd and John.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Listen, let me tell you, Russell Todd, I've had such a good... In fact, Lauren Marie and Russell and I have been trying to finagle, you know, somebody else to work with us in terms of getting us conventions, just because it's been so dry this last year. And, you know, we've been in, you know, text contact almost, you know, every week at least.
Oh, well, please tell them we said hi. We've had both of them on the show. We love both of them. They're great. All of your co-stars are great. So, yeah, we love them.
Yeah, we got really lucky.
Yes. Well, have a great rest of your day. We really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be in touch, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
See you later.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Happy Horror Time.
If you'd like to support the podcast, please sign up to be a patron at www.patreon.com/happyhorrortime. As a patron, you get access to all our bonus content, which now includes 2 new bonus episodes every month, a monthly after show mini episode, access to our Discord community so you can chat with us directly, and the chance to review a film with us in one of our bonus episodes.
Patrons also get all our regular episodes ad-free and a day early, our monthly newsletter, the chance to vote in polls, and autographed Happy Horror Time stickers.
I'm Matt Emmert.
And I'm Tim Murdoch.
And we hope you have a happy horror time.